Hey there, it's me, BrettFish, and welcome back to Out of the Fishbowl. Audre Lorde has this quote that goes, "It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." Let me say that again. It's not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So I want to do some of the work to hopefully recognize, accept, and celebrate the differences that exist among us, especially when it comes to being of a different color, different culture, different background. And we're going to look at that in episode 3, The Amazing Race. So in that quote, Audre speaks about our failure or our inability to recognize, to accept, and celebrate our differences. And that is where I really want to start this. And that's the ending point of this conversation, which is not going to cover everything that needs to be covered. It's just going to be a taste and hopefully a nudge and an invitation to curiosity about these things. If these are things you haven't thought about before, or maybe you have and you're just trying to think a little bit more deeply about them. But this idea of celebrating difference, the amazing race. When we enter these kind of conversations, a lot of people are often defensive and often scared that you're going to make me feel guilty. You want me to carry white guilt. I hear that so often. You carry white guilt. You're living with your white guilt. Now, I don't have any white guilt. I carry a fair measure of what I see as white responsibility, white opportunity to reverse wrongs, to bring restitution, to make things better, to make up for some of the mess that people who look like me perpetrated, and people like me, and sometimes me. But it's to the end of us celebrating the differences between us. It's to the ends of us creating a world where it is diverse and that is beautiful. It is worth celebrating. We see the amazingness in other people. And so I want to encourage you, if you're listening to this, if it feels a little bit tricky or a little bit complicated or difficult, or if it's rubbing against you in the wrong way, just lean in. Be curious and try to hold down the defensiveness, because we are talking about a really beautiful, amazing thing. This Out of the Fishbowl is about moving away from the way things have been and swimming in a different direction, finding something that is more incredible than what you've already known, and doing it that way. And so this really is about that. This really is about looking at something that is worth embracing, not something to make us feel guilty or feel bad. There have been many bad and awful and evil things done in the past, and we are going to acknowledge those. And we're going to do the work that has to be done, but for the purposes of seeing each other and finding each other and celebrating what happens when people who don't look like each other come together and meet as equals, as people that respect each other. And so that's really the journey that I'm wanting to do. And one of the things that always comes up quite early in this journey is this idea of white privilege. And that is a term that sends many people running. But I think a lot of the arguments around white privilege, a lot of the pushback is because people don't understand what it means. People don't understand what it means in this context. People hear the word privilege and they go, well, I grew up poor, or I worked for everything I had. I didn't have privilege. And yet the term is white privilege. And so let's look at one or two definitions of white privilege. It is the set of societal privileges that white people benefit from beyond those commonly experienced by people of color in the same social, political, or economic spaces. And you can talk about nation, community, workplace, income, all of that kind of thing. That was just from Wikipedia. But another definition, white privilege, has been defined as unearned advantages of being white in a racially stratified society, and has been characterized as an expression of institutional power that is largely unacknowledged by most white individuals. And that's from Neville, Worthington, and Spanyaman, 2001. This idea of unearned advantages that are largely unacknowledged by most white individuals. And there's an amazing tool online called the Invisible Knapsack that was put together. And it's really just a list of questions or a list of statements. And the idea is you go down this list and you tick them. And there's things about gender, there's things about race, sexuality, all these kind of things. But I just want to read, and this is in a context this wasn't written for South Africa, but so much of this stuff still applies. And many of you who are listening are not from South Africa as well. So see how this applies to your context and think of this as you. So if you were looking down this list, which are the things you would tick? I identify as white. I've never been discriminated against because of my skin color. I've never been the only person of my race in a room. When people hear me speak, they don't ask me where I'm from. Strangers can consistently pronounce my name properly. The language I speak in school is the same as the primary language I speak at home. I've never been told that the way I usually speak is not proper English. I've never been told I'm attractive for my race. I've never been a victim of violence because of my race. I've never been called a racial slur. I've never been told I sound white. A stranger has never asked to touch my hair or asked if it is real. The people in power in my city look like me. I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty assured that I will not be followed or harassed. I can do well in a challenging situation without being called a credit to my race. I'm never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. For the most part, if I ask to talk to the person in charge, I will be facing a person of my race. If a traffic cop pulls me over, I can be sure I haven't been singled out because of my race. And then this last one. I don't have to think about my racial identity every day. I can decide when and where I think about it. And I think that one is key because as a white person, until I started actively, intentionally thinking about race, I never had to think about it. But listening to my black, my colored, my Indian friends, it's something they have to think about every day. It's something that they are confronted with every day, living in a situation, in a country, in a space that was created for whiteness. And in many cases still operates in that way. And so that list, you might tick some of them, you might not tick all of them, but it starts to give us an understanding of this thing of what it means to be white, to have white privilege. Unearned advantages. So because I'm white, I never get asked these certain things. I never have these things expected of me. I never have suspicion cast on me. I don't have people following me around in shops, all of those kind of things. I don't have people winding up their car windows when I come near. Many of those things are true because I'm white and are not true for other people of color. And so that is really this understanding of privilege. So I can have grown up poor, but still have the privileges that are attached to being a white person. When I walk into a bank, I'm more likely to get a higher loan than a black person. That has recently just still been proved true. I'm more likely to phone in and have a restaurant table reserved for me if I sound white or if I have a white name, than some places that will hear a black accent on the phone or hear a black name and say, sorry, we're full. And then the white person phones a couple of minutes later and suddenly there's lots of space. That's happened to people I know a lot of the time. It's happened with people trying to rent places. It's happened with people trying to go places. There is privilege attached to being white. And if I grew up super poor, the fact that I look white still gives me a lot of those privileges. So it doesn't necessarily mean I'll contain all the same privilege. And it doesn't mean that black people won't be more wealthy than me or won't have to work less hard than me in some cases. But it's saying that none of that stuff happens because I am white. And so we can live lives where there's privilege lacking, but is the privilege lacking because I'm white or is the privilege lacking for other reasons? And so when we talk about race, we talk about white privilege. It's this thing that in South Africa, the country was organized to work officially for white people who made up 7, 8, 9% of the population. The last figure I could find was 2022. White people make up 7.3% of the population of South Africa, and yet the country worked for them. So during apartheid, electricity only really had to work for 7.3% of the country. And then suddenly there was the transition and the handover, and now electricity has to work for 100% of the people, or a larger percentage of the people. And so people can look and say, oh, well, the government's doing it wrong. They messed up. They're not running things. But it's like this country that was pointed in the direction of white people. So it really worked well for a small group of people. Suddenly had to start working well for a lot of people. Another place we'll see that is in education. During the height of apartheid, For every white pupil in a school, the government would pay 1,211 rand. For every Indian pupil, 771 rand. For every colored pupil, 498 rand. For every black pupil, 146 rand. So if you're a white pupil, you're getting almost 10 times the amount of money, resources, infrastructure than a black person. And for black people, they actually designed Bantu education, a more inferior form of education, to intentionally keep black people, other people of color, less clever, less knowledgeable, less academic. And so the whole system and structure of apartheid was white privilege 101. Everything. If you're white, you get these benefits, you're treated like this, you don't have to carry a pass, you can go where you want, you can do what you want, that kind of thing. And since transition, a lot of that has changed. But in many places, there are still systems and structures that benefit white people. And so we have to sit and ask ourselves, like, what do we do with this white privilege? Do I need to sit and feel guilty because I have white privilege? And the answer is no. I've come up with 3 things that I think make the most sense when it comes to white privilege, and this is how I've kind of looked through it or tried to understand it for myself as I've read and listened and spoken to people and tried to navigate my way through understanding how I can show up as a white person in South Africa and around the world. The first thing with white privilege is to recognize it. I need to see and notice that there are many situations, even still today, where, like, I walk into a shop and I don't get treated with suspicion. A black person walks into a shop, they might be followed around because someone thinks they're going to steal someone. I've never in a shop been asked where they keep the sugar or where they keep, like, as if I work there. But I've had many black friends tell stories where people have mistaken them for people that work in the store. And so there's that privilege. Certain things are never going to happen to me and certain things are always going to happen to me. And so it's important that I firstly recognize that. And once I've recognized it, the second thing is to acknowledge it, to say it. My name is BrettFish Anderson. I have white privilege. I get it. I can see it. I can start to look for it. I can recognize it when it happens. I can see places. I can recognize it, acknowledge it. And then the part that is most important, because I don't think people are talking about give away white privilege. You can't give away white privilege in many cases. Those things are set in place. But what you can do is you can leverage white privilege. And so it's about being aware of, in situations, in places, with resources, whatever it is, that you have an advantage that somebody doesn't have. How can you use your advantage to level the playing field for somebody else, to assist somebody else, to get out of the way, to open the door for somebody else, to use your access that you often have, to use the lack of suspicion you have, to use the networks you have. How can I leverage my privilege to help others? And that's really all it is. So I recognize the privilege, I acknowledge the privilege, I leverage the privilege. I start to use it, I start to be aware of where I'm being given undue respect. And I can start to interrupt things, and I can start to name things and speak them out as well. And that brings me to another aspect of this conversation around race and kind of working towards this thing of the amazing race. The second episode I ever did on Out of the Fishbowl was called Diverse versus Divers. So season 1, episode 2. And it really looked at this idea of diversity. And with the work that I do in Heartlines, we often do these things we call diversity bubbles. So if we're in a room with people, we tell people to get into groups of 4 and make them as diverse as you can make them. And we don't talk about race, we don't talk about gender, we just let people define it as they want to. So sometimes people will look at how tall people are, they'll look at the way people are dressed, they'll look at what different jobs people have or where people come from. And we form diversity bubbles in that way, little groups of 4. And then we invite people, take 5 minutes and figure out all the ways that your group is diverse. And so there's some things that you can see, often race, often gender, often you might get an idea of where someone's from or what they do. But then there are other things that you have to have a conversation. Where do you live? What kind of sport do you enjoy? What kind of music do you like? And so you start to figure out the different forms of diversity that exist in each group. And what is amazing is that if you have everyone the same in a group, that group is just going to be very the same. But the moment you have diversity, if you think of diversity of skills that people have, if somebody is really strong in admin, somebody's really strong in leadership, somebody's really strong in practical skills, when you put the 3 of them together, you have a working machine. You have 3 people that can do a variety of things. But if you put 3 admin people together, you have a lot of people that can really do emails well. And so diversity says we can do more things. We can listen to more things, we can taste more things, we can achieve more things because we each bring something different into the room. I like to think of it as a stew. Stew is one of my favorite meals. You just keep putting all these different things into the stew, and everything, all the different things kind of add their little pot. And it's a stew. The stew is the success, not the meat or the potatoes or the carrots or whatever, but it's the combination when each thing adds its flavor, its taste, its kind of contribution to the pot. Then you get this thing that is greater than the sum of the parts. And so diversity in South Africa, I think, has been a negative word. We've seen people as different, we've called them other, and we've feared them, and our history has kind of largely kind of led us to do that. But the moment we start to realize, wait, diversity can be a good thing, it can be a beautiful thing, it can be enriching, it can bring life, it can bring new things into the space, then suddenly we are open to opportunity. But diversity cannot be the end point, and I speak about this in that episode. Diversity is when you have all sorts of different people in the room, black, colored, Indian, and white people in the room. But if white people are still running the room, if white people are still the bosses or the pastors or the leaders or whatever, then you don't have a healthy diversity. Sure, everyone looks different, but it's still a very white heavy room. And so diversity we see as the start to this thing, but it has to lead to a space of inclusion where everybody feels included. And then the final point is a point of belonging where everybody feels like they belong in the space. My ideas are important. I have power. I have authority. I get respect. My suggestion will be taken as seriously as the person next to me. Together we co-create the space. This space I am part of, I belong. And so that's kind of the journey that you're invited to. Like, we need to have more diverse spaces. I feel like if everyone looks the same in a space, and so this idea of Oranje in South Africa, this one region that has been put aside for Afrikaans people, and everybody there is kind of the same, that makes me so sad, not because I judge it, and I do, but not because of that, but because I sit and think, what are they missing out on? What are the flavors? What are the gifts? What are the characteristics? What are the different elements that they are missing because they don't have black people, because they don't have Indian people, they don't have colored people? And when I sit in a diverse group of my friends, different race groups, different cultures, different backgrounds bring different things, and we can start to celebrate that because it really starts to up the flavor. One of the most important lessons I ever learned, and I think I have spoken about this before, but when I was in America about 15 years ago, it was this notion, and I think this is how you find diversity. If you're sitting there going, that's all very well and proper, how do I do this stuff? Brett, you're talking about things, I can get the concepts, I'm interested, but how do I do it? And one of the things that really helped me the most was this thing of changing up the voices in my head, changing up the voices that informed me. And I'm not talking about the voices in my head like in a weird way, like, go and do that thing, Brett. I'm not talking about those voices. That's a whole different podcast. But I'm talking about the books that I read. And so since I came back from America, I've been super intentional about reading people a lot more that don't look like me. The next book I'm reading is sitting right next to me. It's called Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Saad. And so she's a very different person to me, different background, different gender, different country, all of that kind of thing. I'm going to learn so much because she is not a white South African middle-aged male. And back in the day, I used to read a lot of American middle-aged Christian white males, and not that there's anything wrong with those, but that's all that I would read. And so it would be very much a sameness. As I've started to read people of different color, different gender, different countries, as I've started to dip into trying to understand some of the Palestine-Israel history, as I've started to read a lot more poetry and Rumi and various others, as I start to read Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, my favorite author from Nigeria, the storytelling is different. The images are different. The background, the perspective is different. And so my worldview starts to be shaped. I start to see and understand stories from other people's points of view. And so I start to consider other people more than I might normally. And so that's a really amazing place. If you're not sure where to start, change up the voices that inform you. That can be the books you read. It can be the podcasts you listen to. You can even go a little bit further into music and movies and shows and just start watching a few different things. Take in a few different examples of the things that you're used to, the things you may be comfortable with, and see what it might not do to the diversity of your thinking, the diversity of your lived experience. And especially when it comes to people, this can be a tricky point, because it's not like go out and find a black friend. That can be very unfair on the black friend. But start to put yourself in places where the likelihood of connecting with and engaging with a friend who doesn't look like you is improved. So maybe it's a sports team. Maybe it's a church. Maybe it's a gym. Maybe it's choosing to go to a shopping center in a different area because you know that there'll be different people. Maybe it's a park run. Maybe it's inviting a colleague who doesn't look like you out for coffee and saying, "Hey, I'd love to hear some of your story. I'd love to understand what you're going through. I'd love to hear about your family," things like that. And as we start to step towards people, as we start to build bridges, as we start to be curious, as we start to inquire, as we start to invite diversity, we will find that we really enjoy it, I think, for the most part. And we'll find that we'll seek and crave it more. Because when there are different people in the room, when there are different voices coming in, then it just starts the amazing race. We're talking about the amazing race. We're talking about all the incredible things that happen when different people, different ideas, different backgrounds and perspectives come together. This is a good thing. Now, all of this is coming on the back of something that happened in South Africa earlier this week, where a bunch of people marched, and it was a really small bunch. South Africa has more than 50 million people in it. This was a group of maybe 1,500 white Afrikaner people. And some of them were carrying signs that said, "Make South Africa great again." Where have I heard that before, right? And if you're American, this applies to you as well. Just substitute America for South Africa, because when you hear the term "make South Africa great," then I think all South Africans are super excited about that. Yes, let's make South Africa great. Let's make this nation great. We see it when we win the Rugby World Cup. We see it typically in sporting events or cultural events, or somebody performs and we are proudly South African because we want South Africa to be great. But the moment we stick "again" on the end, it sends out a warning sign, because that word "again" is very powerful, because it says, look back. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about another time. Look back. And the people that were marching the other day, I don't think they were talking about this transition time from 94 to now. It really felt like they were talking about before that. And before that, we had apartheid. And before that, we had colonialism. A time that was great, in a way, for white people, and not so great, or really not great, for people that weren't white. And so what it really felt like these people were saying, that when they put these signs out that said "Make South Africa great again," is they were saying, bring back apartheid, bring back separation, bring back higher walls and being cut off from other races, and a total lack of understanding of what it means if we just lower our defenses, if we extend our tables, if we seek diversity, if we change up the voices in our head and we realize this is a good thing. This is a very good thing. In America, when they're saying "make America great again," you go back and you have the Jim Crow laws, you go back, you have slavery. It's a similar kind of story to South Africa in terms of, yes, great for white people, not so great for everyone else. And so it's a problematic statement, and it comes from a problematic place of people that are filled with fear and anger and misunderstanding, because those are people that aren't engaging in relationships with people that don't look like them. It's obvious. The only way they are engaging with black people is people that work for them. Maybe people that clean their homes or their gardens or pack their groceries at the store. And so the moment that you can sit at the table with somebody as an equal and invest in spending some time listening to their story, and you hear them talking about their kids, if they have children, you go, wow, that's the same way I feel about my kids. Or you hear about them struggling with an aspect of singleness, and you go, sure, that was what I struggled with when I was single. Or you hear them worried about losing their job, and you go, well, that's how I felt when I spent 3 years and I couldn't find any work. And suddenly you start to realize that as people, we have so much in common. As people, there is so much that connects and unites and pulls us together. And then the things that are different, when we stop looking at them as negatives, as things to judge, but start looking at them as exciting new flavors, influences, perspectives, ideas, possibilities, opportunities, the amazing race. Suddenly we start to see this idea of what the rainbow could have looked like if South Africa ever had that picture that Desmond Tutu spoke about, the rainbow nation. beautiful concept never happened, except we see glimpses of it in the rugby games, in community outreaches, when somebody's car breaks down and you just see various people jumping out and running and helping push. There are moments when the rainbow breaks through, and it would be so much more amazing to be in a place that was the Rainbow Nation, and every now and then maybe rain or thunderstorms or other cracks would be the exception. But until we change our hearts and our mindset and we get curious and we start engaging and we seek diversity that leads to inclusion, that leads to belonging, until we move away from hate and fear, until we recognize the privilege that we have and start saying, how can we make this country work well for everyone that lives in it? Until we get there, the rainbow will stay away. Another thing that people often talk about these conversations is this idea of colorblind. Oh, I don't see race. And what I want to say to you is you absolutely have to see race. You absolutely have to see race. If you're colorblind, that makes me nervous. Like, I don't want to drive with you if you can't tell the difference between red and green when we come to a traffic light. That can really be dangerous. But if you don't see race, then what it means is if somebody is being harmed because of their race, if somebody's being sidelined because of their race, if somebody is not receiving an opportunity because of their race, then you don't see that. And that means that you don't see them. And so I wrote this, that the ideal is to one day end up in a world where race doesn't negatively impact some people and not others, because then we won't have to talk about race. But while it does, we do. Because race matters, because race has mattered so much in the history of South Africa, and because so many people are still hurting today in the legacy of what was done in apartheid, in terms of where they live, in terms of what was taken away from them, in terms of how disunified things are, how unequal things are, we still have to continue to talk about race. This idea of colorblind doesn't help. It gets in the way because it's not true, firstly. We all do see race. But what if you're saying to somebody, I don't see this part that is such an important part of you? And what if instead of saying, I don't see race, we move to this idea of, I don't judge race. I don't think of you less because of race, but I want to see the beauty in your race and in the perspective you bring to the table and in everything about who you are and your story and your life and the struggles and the pain. That much of that is caught up in your race. I want to see that because I want to see you. And when I see you, then we will start to find each other. Then we start to find this thing of the amazing race. I was looking at quotes on race before this, and obviously I came upon a Martin Luther King quote. But this was a quote I've never seen before, and I love it so much, where apparently Martin Luther King Jr. said this: I want to be the white man's brother, not his brother-in-law. And that is amazing to me. This idea of brother-in-law, you married, those people have to be your family. You have to like them. You have this kind of contractual thing that says, okay, I must be nice to you, I must pitch up at your ceremonies. But your brother, like, it's real. It's blood. And I like this term of family who are friends and friends who are family, because I've got brothers and sisters that aren't biologically connected to me, and they are family. And that is the essence of what we're looking for. I don't want to be an in-law. I don't want to be like 1 degree removed. I want people to see me as if I'm their own family. I think that's what he was saying there. I want to be closely, intimately connected to you. The second last tattoo that I got says on my shoulder, it says, Umuntu Gumuntu Gabantu. I am a person through people. In your peoplehood, I find my own personage. And I think that's so important, that we find ourselves in community, that as we are connected to the people around us, we start to find our humanity. Perhaps one of the interesting things in this whole conversation about race is that for white people, racism had a cost. And that's maybe something we don't see as easily as we see the cost to black and colored and Indian and other people, where it was obvious the emotional and the physical and practical costs that it took on all of them, all the people that racism played out on. But for white people doing the racism, being responsible for it, engaging in it, setting up systems that benefited white people over other people, the cost for us was our humanity, our integrity, our character, the fact that we set ourselves up as better than other people. There is something in that where we lost a little bit of our soul, perhaps. And as somebody who tries to be a follower of Jesus, we have this kind of baseline belief that everybody is created in the image of God. And how that helps me is that if that is my starting point with somebody, that you are created in the image of God, then it means that I will see you as an equal. I will see you as somebody who is worthy of all of the rights that all humans should have. And the moment that I allow that idea to slip, you are not created in the image of God, then it allows me to start doing despicable things. It starts to let me think differently and treat you badly and all that kind of thing. And so holding on to that, and maybe for those who aren't followers of Jesus, there's a sense of just everybody is created equal, and letting that be our starting base point. And if that is our point, then we're looking at creating a world that works for everybody that lives in it. And that's really been the heart of this podcast. How do we make the world a better place that suits everybody that lives here? And so we've only just really touched on this topic, and hopefully, as you've been listening, hopefully with an open mind, there's been something that has jumped out for you, or some thinking that might make it a bit easier. I think this thought of inviting different voices to inform you and to educate you and even to entertain you and start to get different perspectives, that for me has been such a powerful thing. And so if that's one thing you take from this, that's amazing. But I just want to finish with 3 quotes that I found that really sum up some of the things that we've been engaging in, and hopefully will sit with us as reflection points as we leave this. The first one was by Rachel Cargill, and it says, unless the racism is addressed and eradicated in the places you are looking to make diverse, you are simply bringing people of color into violent and unsafe spaces. And we've kind of touched on that already, that if we are creating spaces of diversity, so it looks like everybody is in the room, but we're not allowing everybody to be in management and decision making and receiving the money and all those kind of things. If you have a black friend, but you are not working on your anti-racism, then you are just inviting people of color into unsafe places. And so it starts with diversity. It can't end there. We need to continually be moving towards inclusion and belonging and making sure that everyone feels welcome and in charge of every space. The second quote is by a guy called Scott Woods, and it's a lot longer one, but I think it really sums up well what we've been talking about. The problem is that white people see racism as conscious hate, when racism is bigger than that. Racism is a complex system of social and political levers and pulleys set up generations ago to continue working on the behalf of whites at other people's expense, whether whites know or like it or not. Racism is an insidious cultural disease. It is so insidious that it doesn't care if you are a white person who likes black people. It's still going to find a way to infect how you deal with people who don't look like you. Yes, racism looks like hate, but hate is just one manifestation. Privilege is another, access is another, ignorance is another, apathy is another, and so on. So while I agree with people who say no one is born racist, it remains a powerful system that we are immediately born into. It's like being born into air. You could take it in as soon as you breathe. It's not a cold that you can get over. There's no anti-racist certification class. It's a set of socio-economic traps and cultural values that are fired up every time we interact with the world. It's a thing you have to keep scooping out of the boat of your life to keep from drowning in it. I know it's hard work, but it's the price you pay for owning everything. And I love that image of scooping water out of the boat, because I feel like that really applies to my life, that I don't see that there's a specific point where I chose not to be racist, and then from that point on I wasn't racist anymore, but that I see anti-racism as the work I'm probably going to have to be doing for the rest of my life. And so even though I was never overtly racist, there have been ways of thinking and ways of viewing people and suspicion and stereotype, all of those kind of things that came easily to me because of kind of the waters I swim in, because I was born in South Africa during apartheid, and because of all the propaganda that came around that, and because of the systems and structures that have been put in place. And so on a daily basis, I'm trying to work on the racism that is still in me. And every few days or every now and then, I catch myself having a thought, or I hear myself saying something and go, wow, I still have work to do. And so I see it as kind of this journey that I'm on for the rest of my life. And hopefully, the more work I do on it, the less frequently I'll find that I have to do the work. But I think it's dangerous to think, cool, I've finished with racism. I've put all that behind me because it's not overt, and not be kind of looking for it and aware of it and inviting others to point it out in me, to hold me accountable. I think that is the journey. And again, it's largely this idea of scooping water out of the boat. You live in a country that was set up on the principles of racism, and so there are so many places where that still pervades, and so you're going to constantly have to be doing work, not just personally, but also in the systems and structures around me, places where I see that things are still kind of skewed towards white people. And then this last quote is a much shorter one, and let's kind of end on this, and it's by somebody called Sherry Faye Rosendahl. And it says, the only thing that should come after I'm not racist, but racism is so ingrained in my society and culture that on some level I definitely am and need to do my part to destroy the system of oppression that people like me have created and benefit from on the daily. And that just kind of goes more into what I was just talking about. And so we don't want to be racist, but we realize that there is some work to be done. And we need to be consciously choosing to keep an eye on the world around us, and to be seeing and to be listening to our friends of color when they say this is racist, or when they say this system, this structure is still working against us. We need to be listening with empathy and with wisdom and belief, and really committing to doing what we can to make the world a better place for everyone that lives in it. And so I hope that we have not covered everything that needs to be covered here, for sure. But I hope that there's been some help for you. I hope that if you are somebody that's been trying to understand this stuff or work through it, that there's been some wisdom in here that you can take and work from. If you found this helpful, maybe you know somebody that would benefit from listening to this, then please tell them about it. Share it with other people on your socials. Maybe you have a conversation just from something you heard in here. Maybe you don't have to do the whole episode, but you take something to the dinner table or to a conversation with colleagues or family members and start talking about this stuff. And maybe it's this idea of being more intentional about the voices that inform you and educate you and entertain you. But I hope this has been valuable. This is the work that we continue to do as we hopefully work together to make this world better for everyone that lives in it. I'm BrettFish. This has been Out of the Fishbowl, and I look forward to chatting to you soon. Cheers.